që shoqëritë dhe individët kanë për këto vlera të përbashkëta. Të drejtat e njeriut duhet të jenë baza ligjore gjithë punës së organizatave, qofshin këto qeveritare apo jo qeveritare, në ndërhyrjen e tyre gjatë emergjencave. Nuk ka asnjë kornizë tjetër ligjore për të udhëhequr aktivitetet e tilla në një periudhë emergjencës. Nëse ndihma humanitare nuk bazohet në një kornizë të drejtave të njeriut, mund të ekzistojë rreziku që fokusi të jetë shumë më i ngushtë dhe nevojat themelore të viktimave të mos përfshihen në procesin e përgjithshëm të rikuperimit dhe të rindërtimit. Gjithashtu ekziston edhe një rrezik tjetër, që për mendimin tim është akoma më i rëndësishëm, që neglizhimi të drejtave të njeriut për ata që preken nga fatkeqësitë natyrore do të thotë që të anashkalohet fakti që ky grup njerëzish dhe gjithë shoqëria mbar nuk jetojnë në një boshllëk juridik, por në vende ku duhet të sundojë ligji, duhet të sundojnë rregullat dhe institucionet që duhet të mbrojnë të drejtat e tyre. Parimet ndërkombëtare të drejtave të njeriut duhet të udhëzojnë menaxhimin e riskut gjatë emergjencave, përfshirë këtu dhe masat e zbutjes, siç po ndodh aktualisht në këtë periudhë në vendin tonë, të përgatitjes përpara emergjencës, ndërhyrjen menjëherë pas emergjencës dhe rehabilitimin dhe përpjekjet për të rindërtuar apo për të rimëkëmbur shoqërinë nga pasojat e një situate të emergjencës humanitare. Ata që janë në një rrezik duhet të mbrohen nga dhuna dhe abuzimi, duhet të mbrohen të drejtat e tyre. Të zhvendosurve, siç ishte në rastin e tërmetit për shembull, u duhet dhënë mbrojtje dhe asistencë dhe duhet të jenë në gjendje ose të kthehen në siguri, në situatë sigurie, pra me një dinjitet në pronat e tyre të mëparshme, ose të ndihmohen për të integruar në sa më afër origjinës së tyre, le të themi lokalisht, dhe për të vendosur ose për të vendosur gjet. Po gjithë ky proces sigurisht duhet të ketë parasysh dinjitetin e tyre dhe duhet të ketë parasysh dhe parimet e drejtave të njeriut. Respektimi i standardeve ndërkombëtare të drejtave të njeriut do të ndihmojë të gjithë ne, qofshin ata që janë viktima të situatës emergjencës, po qoftë edhe institucionet, por shoqërinë në tërësi, në sigurimin e plotë të nevojave themelore që shoqëria ka nevojë në një situatë të tillë, po sidomos të atyre që janë viktima të identifikuara apo përfituesve të ndërhyrjeve. Sfida më e madhe shpesh është se si të zbatohen këto rregulla në një kontekst operativ. Dhe për këtë arsye ne kemi dy eksperte që në punën e tyre të vazhdueshme për vite më radhë janë marrë me çështjet e drejtave të njeriut. Folësja e parë do të jetë Osa Nilhen. Osa punon për programin e të drejtave të njeriut dhe çështjeve gjinore pranë zyrës rajonale të Organizatës Botërore të Shëndetësisë në Europë, pra në Kopenhagen. Osa ka studiuar për shkencat politike, pra është një shkencëtare politike, le të themi, e specializuar në mbrojtjen e drejtave të njeriut dhe në promovimin nëpërmjet politikave, ligjeve të drejtave të njeriut. Gjithashtu ka dhe një specializim për sa i përket impaktit social dhe impaktit në shëndetësi të situatave diskriminuese, stereotipit gjinor, barazisë gjinore. Gjithashtu ajo ka ekspertizën e saj në dizenjimin apo në përpilimin e politikave dhe masave që i përgjigjen nevojave të këtyre grupeve vulnerabël. Aktualisht puna e saj është e fokusuar në impaktin në shëndetësi të barazisë gjinore, të problemeve të seksualitetit, të problemeve të drejtave të shëndetësore dhe riprodhuese në rajonin e Europës. Më pas do kemi Melita Murkon, të cilën unë do ta prezantoj në mënyrë më të detajuar mbas prezantimit të Asa. So, Asa, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. If not, Nelly or Ina, you could let me know, right? So as Nelly said, my name is Åsa Nylén. I work for the WHO, the regional office for Europe in Copenhagen in the Gender and Human Rights program. And today I will start this round of presentations. Melita will follow me. I will start with focusing on what we actually mean when we talk about the rights-based approach to health. It will be a very introductory kind of presentation, and I hope we can follow up with the questions afterwards. Our focus here is on emergencies, and I have picked the current COVID-19 pandemic as an example, and also included relations to, of course, mental health. But basically, what I will present will be relevant for any emergency as such. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen, and bear with me. All right, so I hope this is visible to you. Yeah. Well, as I said, I want to start with focus on the COVID pandemic, and I believe many of you might have seen headlines like what I have put in this slide. Where the UN Secretary General is telling us that the COVID-19 pandemic is a public health emergency, but it is more than that. It is an economic crisis, a social crisis, and it's a human crisis that is becoming a human rights crisis. And this is where I would like to start, because when we read these things, they sound, of course, very dramatic, and we want to kind of dig deeper into this and understand what actually is meant with such a statement. In the UN, we are responsible for promoting and protecting human rights across all countries, and we have a special mandate to take care and always raise awareness on this. And this is what our Secretary General did on 23rd of April this year in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. Us in WHO, we also, as we are part of the UN, we definitely try to put more content, or we always try to put more content to this type of statement as from a health perspective. So in WHO, we have issued a kind of an advocacy brief, small, short publication that, and I've put the link in this slide because I invite you all to read it, which is called Addressing Human Rights as Key to the COVID-19 Response. And this brief goes through the different topics that are very relevant to consider from a human rights perspective in this emergency and in any emergency. And I have also put on this slide a quote from our Director General that we always need to in emergencies, try to strike this fine balance between protecting health and minimizing disruption, but at the same time respecting human rights. So what exactly are the main human rights issues that we need to think of when we have a situation like the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, they are listed here on this slide to the left. And of course, we can think of more, but these are some categories that kind of put some things into focus. The first category of issues is stigma and discrimination, because we know that in all emergencies, such as the one we are in now, we have certain groups that are targeted in different ways, either because they are affected with the disease or because they are blamed for being part of transmitting a disease and so on. It's the same with any other emergency. You have a certain kind of tendency to try to put some people in very difficult position and blaming them for something. And this is definitely part of a human rights-based approach to highlight this and try to avoid this as much as possible. Another issue is around gender equality, and we have in all countries in the world, in Europe, definitely still gender inequalities, still social inequalities, and in emergencies, these inequalities, they tend to be more severe or more visible. And in terms of gender inequalities and the COVID-19, we see, for example, how women get affected through, for example, having to take on a very large care burden, caring for ill, both at home or at the hospitals, and also caring for their children, maybe even more than before, in an unequal or a gender unequal way, which limits women's opportunities and rights in other ways. In the health system, we know that more than 70% of the health system are female health workers, and we also know that these female health workers are usually in the lower paid jobs, and this is of course something that comes very much in focus in a type of pandemic, where women are at the front line of the response. We also need to think of human rights in terms of the support that vulnerable, especially vulnerable populations would need within in an emergency context. For example, in the COVID-19, COVID-19 is experienced differently for different populations. And the human rights-based approach, it can be very useful to identify what groups are in need of special protection and care. And in the COVID-19 situation, we have identified older people as such a group, but also people living with disabilities, people in low socioeconomic circumstances, homeless, and so on. And here we use the human rights-based approach to identify these groups. The other elements here, you can see, I will go quickly through them. For example, the restrictive measures such as quarantine should always be, and it's been used very much in the COVID-19 pandemic. It's very much impacting your human rights. It limits your freedom of movement and so on. And there are specific rules within international law on how wide-reaching these interventions can be to protect public health. And we should always make sure and raise awareness on how much a government actually can do, and where we need to take other human rights considerations into concern. Shortages of supply and equipment we've seen throughout the COVID-19 pandemic as well. And here a human rights-based approach can solve ethical issues choose on how to distribute resources when they're scarce, where to actually put the scarce resources you have to reach as many as possible. The last dimension is around the fact that in all situations, governments are obligated in international human rights law to actually collaborate across borders. And this is again something that is very relevant to think of in any emergency. And moving on to the next slide, where so this was like an introduction which sort of frames the topic of a rights-based approach to health. And now I would like to go back a little bit in time to explain a little bit how what we see as a rights-based approach to health in WHO. And it starts already at the time of the WHO Constitution, which was formulated in 1945, and it was put into force in 1948. And actually in the WHO Constitution, we have a first legal definition of health. You can call it a legal one because it's in the Constitution. And you also have a very first formulation of what we see as the right to health, and how, or the fact that that health is actually a human right. And this was historically, I say it as the first because all the human rights laws and treaties that came within international law, they came after the WHO Constitution. So, so this is the first kind of attempt to formulate a right to health. How do we see the connections between health and human rights when we work with this in WHO? Well, we basically see three major connections, and this is illustrated here by these three rings. I can start with the blue circle, which explains that human rights violations can have a direct health impact. And you can see the arrows, some examples of these types of human rights violations. So these are of course violence in different ways, torture, but also arbitrary detention, deprivation of liberty, which is not justified. It has definitely health impact. Another interrelation between health and human rights is illustrated by the green circle. And this is around how you as a person are actually enjoying other rights, such as the right to education or the right to adequate standard of, or adequate housing, and gender inequalities, as I said, how these other rights, what we also can call the determinants of health, how well you actually are able to take advantage of them is having an impact on your health. The pink circle is focusing on health policy and how we develop health policy, and how human rights can be promoted through the development of health policy, both in the way you design the health policy, in the way that you involve people that are affected by the policy within the policy decisions and within the policy formulation, but also how you implement it and evaluate it, and so on. So this is like a framework that we use when we want to discuss the interconnections between health and human rights. I want to point out that that it is in all countries the government that is responsible for the promotion and protection of human rights within the country. So it's a government responsibility, and the government is responsible for human rights in 3 different ways. One is that government should respect your rights, which means that they should not violate any right that you might have in the law because of your ethnic belonging, because you're a man or a woman, because you have more or less income, so to speak. The other one is that the government, or the second point is that the government is responsible to protect your right. This is to provide for, through laws and through policies, that you actually that your rights are protected from interference from, let's say, third parties or from your neighbor, basically. And then the third one is around fulfilling human rights. It's more like a positive, active approach that the government should actually take measures to ensure, through laws, through policies, that the rights that they have signed up to and committed to should be implemented in the country that you are in. And I will later come to some example for Albania and mental health on this. This is around principles. What do we see as the principles behind the human rights-based approach to health? And also on this slide, I have put that we have a double aim when we say that we want to base our health interventions on human rights. One aim is to promote respect, dignity, equal treatment of everyone. But the other aim is also to create health interventions or health policies that are sustainable and effective. That actually work. And some of the principles you can see on to the right, and they are, oh, now I can hear myself, I think. 1 second. Thank you very much. So these principles are that any health intervention or policy would need to be inclusive and focused on people. We see it's very connected to non-discrimination. We see it, for example, in the area of migration, how some health interventions are defined to not include people coming from another country, for example. And we also see that the effect of this is mainly not good for public health, that public health is better if we are as inclusive as possible. We would need to do, any intervention we do would need to be based on informed consent of the people that it's targeting, to protect their privacy and confidentiality. It's very important that healthcare that is provided is voluntary, and voluntary because this is also proven many times to be the more effective way of actually helping someone, right? And that the health system need to ensure that that there are referrals and continuity. And a second aspect, or a final aspect I want to say, that is many times not always discussed, because we discuss a lot how we should treat patients or how we should be able to access healthcare, is around the health workforce, because a human rights-based approach to health is very much focused on empowering the health workforce and protecting their rights as well, so that they can provide the best care possible. Because we know that in systems where the health workers' rights are not well protected, the healthcare provided is also not optimal. So in WHO, work with this human rights-based approach to health. And what does it mean in our work? It means that when we formulate a policy or a program or technical assistance to any government, this is focusing, the goal of this is to realize human rights. The process that we use is that the standards of human rights should guide this collaboration. And this is, again, some of these principles that I showed on the other slide around non-discrimination, transparency, accountability, participation of who this policy is supposed to target. The outcome of the collaboration should always focus on either building the capacity of a government to better protect and promote the rights of its population, or to empower people to better claim their rights to the government. So it's a two-way kind of process. Here I would like to show you a little bit how different human rights is protected in international law. So we have in the UN, it's not within the WHO, it's within another part of the UN called the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. They are the secretariat for many international human rights conventions. And on this slide, you can see all of them. And there are, many of you might have heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is in the left, top left corner. And this is a political declaration. It's not a law, but this political declaration, it's from 1948, and it was turned into two big international treaties. One called International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the other one on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And the reason why we have two of these is because in that time we had a lot of politics around what type of rights were more important. And we had some countries who said that civil and political rights are the more important, while others said the economic, social, and cultural rights. So they didn't manage to put it all down in one document, so they have put it down in two. And now we have both of them, and they are very much interconnected. The Civil and Political Rights Convention include rights like freedom of torture, right to political participation, right to movement, to assembly, to free speech, and this kind of rights. While the other one includes right to health, right to education, right to adequate housing, and these kinds of rights. Then we have many, in fact, we have 7 more treaties, which are either focusing on specific phenomena, as you see in this column, such as discrimination, torture, enforced disappearances, or you have conventions that focus specifically on groups, women, children, migrant workers, and persons with disabilities. And the way the system functions is that that all governments, including your government, because Albania has signed up to all of these conventions and said that and committed to implement them in national law. And every 4 years, you go through a review on how well you have implemented these conventions, and this is done by the this is done by the UN. And after that review, the UN issues recommendations, and I'm going to show you an example on some of the rights that are included in the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. because they are very relevant to mental health. So here we have a couple of examples of these articles saying, for example, that every person with a disability has a right to physical and mental integrity on an equal basis with others, so people without a disability, and that people with disability can enjoy legal capacity on an equal basis with others, and the government should support this. And also that persons with disabilities should enjoy the right to liberty, and if they are deprived of this liberty, it should be on an equal basis with others who do not have this disability. These are examples of this type of rights that are in this convention. I have also listed another convention at the very end, which is around torture and other cruelly inhuman and degrading treatment and punishment. And it might seem a little bit out of the topic, but actually this convention is used very much also to look at how people with mental health issues and who are living in long-term care homes, for example, how well they are treated within these care facilities. So this is also very relevant if you're in the mental health field. And here you can see an example of recommendations that Albania have received for on the how the human rights in this Convention on Disabilities have been lived up to. It's a very recent report. It's from 2019, and this example is around living independently and being included in the community. I know that Melita is going to speak more about this in her presentation. So you can see that the recommendations that come from these bodies are quite concrete. It says, for example, that Albania should develop and implement an effective deinstitutionalization plan for people with mental disabilities, and that should promote independent living schemes and develop community support services and involve organizations that represent people with disabilities when developing these type of strategies. So these are quite good reference points you can use when you try to develop advocacy or try to implement a policy or a practice in health. And all of these reports are very easy to find. They're on a specific website, a UN website, hosted by this High Commissioner for Human Rights. And there you just click on what country you want to select, and you select Albania, and you will get all the recommendations. This is my final slide, and then I'm going to hand over to Melita, and I'm just, it's like a summing up slide, specifically focusing on emergencies, where I just want to say that we need to discuss human rights in the time of emergencies because of the fact that the inequalities that are already in a country will be exacerbated, will be more visible, might be even larger during an emergency. There will be specific groups that would need protection, and an emergency is also, even if tragic or difficult, it's also an opportunity to build back better, as we hear many say these days, to create systems that maybe if they have not worked well before, we can use this opportunity to make change and put things together in maybe a better way than they were. And I have just put on this slide also some guidance also related to COVID-19 on addressing mental health and psychosocial aspects of the COVID-19 outbreak, which outlines some of the recommendations that could be very useful to look into in your work as well. So thank you very much. This was my presentation, and I think that we will move, or I give the floor to Nelly, but I think we will move to Melita and then we will do questions later, but up to you.
Faleminderit shumë, Ausa. Ishte një prezantim shumë I vlefshëm për mendimin tim. Kishte një këndvështrim shumë dimensional mbi çështjet e drejtave të njeriut dhe sigurisht që çështjet e shëndetit mendor ishin përfshirë aty. Tani do doja t'ju prezantoja Melita Murkon, cila është me profesion bazë psikologe. Melita vjen nga Bosnia dhe Hercegovina, por është eksperte e shëndetit mendor pranë programit shëndetit mendor në zyrën rajonale të OBSH-s për Europën në Kopenhagen. Melita ka një eksperiencë mjaft të gjerë në fushën e shëndetit mendor, qoftë për sa i përket kontributit të saj në vendin ku ka jetuar, pra në Bosnjë Hercegovinë, në rang rajonal, por edhe në rang ndërkombëtar. Melita ka qenë pjesë e 2 projekteve shumë të rëndësishme, të cilët janë zhvilluar në Europë, në të lidhura me shëndetin mendor. Njëri prej tyre është projekti shëndetit mendor për Europën juglindore, I cili u implementua nën Paktin e Stabilitetit, iniciativës së kohezionit social të Paktit të Stabilitetit, dhe ne njihemi bashkë me Melitën që atëherë kemi bashkëpunuar në këtë projekt bashkë në vitet 2002-2008, dhe më pas një nga projekt tjetër shumë I rëndësishëm, në cilën Melita ka marrë pjesë, është dhe deklarata europiane e OBSH-s, shëndet më I mirë, jetë më të mira, e cila adreson kryesisht problematikën e fëmijëve dhe të rinjve me paaftësi intelektuale dhe familjeve të tyre. Projekt I cili ka qenë I implementuar nga Komiteti Rajonal në Azerbajxhan në vitin 2011. Që për 2016, Melita punon për OBSH në zyrën rajonale të OBSH-s në Europë, si një ekspert I shëndetit mendor dhe kryesisht përgjegjësitë e saj kryesore janë të koordinojnë punën në këtë zyrë, pra ose ndërhyrjen e OBSH-s me institucionet rezidenciale afatgjata për adultët, për të rritut, pra, dhe për personat me paaftësi intelektuale. Ky projekt fokusohet në implementimin e standardeve cilësore dhe promovimin e të drejtave të njerëzit, si dhe ofrimin e një kujdesi të orientuar drejt rimëkëmbjes në këto institucione rezidenciale. Madje edhe ditët e fundit ne kemi shkëmbyer informacion me Melitën për sa I përket një vlerësimi që po bëhet me këto institucione në Shqipëri për sa I përket problematikave apo sfidave gjatë periudhës Covidit. Zgjata si shumë, floor is yours, Melita. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Nelly, and a warm hello to everyone in Albania. Thank you very much for the time, for making the time to join us. But now I know that many of you will have to leave very shortly to attend the protests. So I would just like to know what time am I given, because my presentation initially was planned for about 20 minutes. I can really reduce it even to 7-8 minutes without missing much, because I have 2 objectives in this presentation, and I can meet them in that short period of time. Mm-hmm. Someone is trying
15 minutes, it will be great.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me just get to my... I hope you can see the presentation. Okay, so my colleague Osa has given in her presentation a wonderful general framework, so it will be easy for me now to zoom in on the specific domain of human rights in mental health. Over the past 4 years, our mental health program at the WHO Regional Office for Europe under the direction of Dr. Dan Chisholm has been extensively involved in the implementation of the Quality Rights Initiative led by Dr. Michel Funk at the WHO headquarters. On our side, this work is primarily done through the project. I would just make this like this. Through the project on long-term care institutions for adults with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities. And the two objectives of my presentation are to tell you just a little bit about the project and some of the main findings, and to introduce you to the available quality rights tools, which I believe every organization, service provider in Albania or anywhere else can really benefit from. So I hope you will find that useful. As you all know, very early on in the pandemic, long-term care institutions, including mental health institutions, revealed their frightening fragility. And for all of us who are familiar with the conditions in these institutions, this of course did not come as a surprise. And we all strongly believe that this current situation must be taken as a final call to countries who are lagging behind in the implementation of deinstitutionalization, so that they put it back on the agenda as a matter of urgency. Our project started in 2015 with a region-wide survey where we wanted to find out, about the number and characteristics of such institutions in Europe. Then in 2017, we used the Quality Rights Assessment Toolkit and managed to assess 98 facilities in 24 countries and in Kosovo. And then in 2018, we moved on to quality improvement work in a small sample of institutions in 14 countries. Albania participated in phase 2, but unfortunately has not continued in phase 3, which of course can change if we secure the funding for continuation of our work. I'm very, very pleased to see that among the participants we have Dr. Emanuela Tologina, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Maybe Emanuela, you want to unmute yourself for a second. Emanuela was the nominated national focal point in Albania. Oh, maybe she's left. Anyway. The main product of that second phase of the project is this report. You can easily find it on our website. It's titled Mental Health, Human Rights and Standards of Care. And the main message of this report is accurately captured in this CNN article with the title, European Mental Health Institutions Fall Far Below the Standard WHO Reports. I am afraid that not much has changed since then, and the report was published almost to the day 2 years ago. It was June 6th, 2018. This slide gives a summary of the findings. I will just quickly explain it. So on the left-hand side, you see the categories that are used for scoring. Achieved in full, meaning that there is evidence that any particular standard is fully met. That's green. Then we have achieved partially, indicating that there is some room for improvement. It's blue. then achievement initiated, meaning that there is considerable room for improvement. Then in red is not initiated, which means that there is no evidence that anything is being done towards achieving the standard. And the final category is not applicable. On the right-hand side, you have the list of 5 themes that are included in the assessment, and each is related to an important human rights domain. The first one is about the right to an adequate standard of living. The second one is about the right to health, physical and mental health. The third one deals with the issues around legal capacity and personal liberty. The fourth one is about freedom from torture and abuse. And the fifth one is about the right to live independently in the community. So in the center of this pie chart, you see the overall number of scoring opportunities, 2,450. And this number we get when we, each theme that I listed has a number of standards within it. And there's 25 standards in total that are assessed with this tool. So this 2,450 you get when multiplying 25 standards by the number of institutions, which was 98. And here you can see that less than a third of scores is green, which tells us that there's huge scope for improvement, and that's what we are trying to address in our work. I will not now go in much detail for each theme, but here, for instance, for theme 1, standard of living, I would just like to draw your attention to standard 1.2 about sleeping conditions, because we know in this situation, this caused huge challenges in the institutions because they are overcrowded, there is lack of personal space. So in many institutions, the implementation of physical distancing measures was virtually impossible. And I mean, of course, there are problems with some other standards, but this one stands out right now. For the second theme about the right to health, we don't know much at this moment about any specific effects of the pandemic on these particular standards. But in this one, I would just like to mention standard 2.3, which is about the implementation or existence of the recovery approach. And this particular standard is not only the poorest in this theme, but was the standard that was least achieved of all 25 standards in the assessment. So we are very far from really fully embracing this model that we understand is crucial. There is no quality service without it. For theme 3, Åsa, of course, could tell much more about all the subtle issues that are hidden here. But at this moment, we know that every country in Europe still needs to work on improving the situation in this area, because as you know, I don't know, what do we call it, a full guardianship, for instance, is still widely practiced in many countries. And also there are many issues around the procedures that are used for obtaining free and informed consent, which we know from the assessment reports very often the signed consent forms that you can find in service users' files there was a lot of persuasion, to put it softly, yeah, rather than free and informed. Okay, so then theme 4, this was very much in the focus of our work last year, because after the assessment phase, many countries approached us with the request to get support in the training of staff on de-escalation, for instance, and other strategies to end the use of restrictive practices, unfortunately very prevalent in the facilities across Europe. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we already have reports of an increase in the use of restrictions and in the prescription of psychotropic medication. Theme 5, about the right to live independently in the community. There is a sad story behind these gray areas that you can see, which means that these were rated as not applicable. And you wonder how is that possible, that, you know, the right to have a proper accommodation or to have education can be not applicable. So rather than asking our assessors to make the correction, because actually all these gray areas should be read, we decided to leave it as it is, because this is very telling in itself. What it tells us is that in many situations, our assessment teams found it uncomfortable to say that it's not initiated, because that would mean that you would blame the facilities for neglecting some of crucially important aspects of anyone's life. Because in their local contexts, the facilities, their role was to serve as end stations, which meant that, you know, once you are there, then why should anybody inform you about housing opportunities or employment opportunities when it is no longer, you know, available to you? So this was for me the most depressing part of the report, and again one strong message that the institutionalization is not progressing as well as we would like it to at this time. Well, my final minutes will be just to show you that the quality rights instruments, tools that I hope you will look for. And if you need any further information, please do get in touch. The toolkit that we used is here. It has 5 modules. I will not mention details. It's just a very, very comprehensive instrument. And recently there is another module which is recommended to be used immediately after the assessment. It's a guidance on improving and transforming services. So that's the assessment part, and here you can see this is a gold mine in my view, with 3 groups of tools, all of them launched last November. There are 5 core training materials where you can really become an expert in human rights if you go through them. Then there is a set of specialized training modules that go in depth on 3 themes. One is recovery, then supported decision-making, and strategies to end seclusion and restraint. And also there is a set of guidance modules that can be very helpful for developing peer support services or for various advocacy activities. And here yes, I must not forget this. The core modules are also available as an online training platform. We call it e-training. Right now, I don't know exactly how many, but it's thousands of people across the world who have completed it, and we've received fantastic feedback. So if you're interested, please just let us know and we can provide you access to this training. All of this can be found on this link, so please take advantage. So that would be all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melita. Very, very useful. And I think, and I hope, let's say, that our participants in this training will take advantage of the materials that will be available online. All the registration videos of the trainings will be available online. All the materials, slides, and links to institutions and to other resources will be available online in a special page that we actually, UNICEF has created. UNICEF is our main technical provider of this training, and I thank them very much. Ka një dy pyetje që janë bërë, pak pyetje, të them të drejtën. Unë do sugjeroja me që kemi, ne themi, shumë pjesëmarrës që do donin të merrin pjesë në protestën e sotme, unë do sugjeroja që të gjithë pyetjet të mund të dërgohen me email në adresën time ose të Ina Verzivollit. Ne do t'i grupojmë ato sipas çështjeve për tu diskutuar, dhe me lejen e Melitës dhe të Osës, unë po propozoj që t'ja dërgojmë atyre dhe të marrim disa përgjigje të cilat gjithashtu mund të bëhen të publikohen online në faqen të cilën unë përmenda më parë. Is it okay with you, both of you, Melita and Osa? Thank you very much. So, atëherë, nuk më ngjelet tjetër vetëm të falenderoj të gjithë pjesëmarrësit. Ishte një ditë po ashtu goxha e suksesshme për sa i përket interesit të treguar nga të gjithë pjesëmarrësit. Shpresojmë që të vazhdojmë bashkë deri në mes të korrikut çdo ditë të njëjtë në orën 3 dhe të dëgjojmë edhe prezantime të tjera mjaft interesante. Javën që vjen, përsëri të njëjtë në orën 3 do kemi Femi Hanaf nga zyra qendrore e OBSH-s në Gjenev. Është një nga ekspertët e shëndetit mendor më të përmendur dhe më të shquar në fushën e shëndetit mendor në OBSH, dhe besoj që do mësoni shumë dhe do argëtoni shumë me zotin Hana. Ju le takim javën që vjen në të njëjtën orë, në të njëjtën ditë. Mirupafshim. Thank you to Melita and Asa.
Ti pikniki, to je bilo.
Mirupafshim.
Zblivan se odpravlja k nam. Kupuje, bo imeli, ne vem, no le.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank
you.
To je to bilo, no. To je science fiction.
Kush është saktë science fiction?
Anche io li mando.
Science fiction. Ok. Mund ta mbyll.
Pa.
Where are the protests?
In the center of the town. Yeah. City center. We're heading them there just now.
Okay. So good luck.
Thank you.